Welcome to the Good Growing Podcast. I am Chris Enroth, horticulture educator with University of Illinois Extension, coming at you from Macomb, Illinois, and we have got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking with MJ Oviatt about agroforestry. Agroforestry. I think I know two of those terms that have been smashed together to create that one term, but we're going to learn all about it today. And you know I'm not doing this by myself. I am joined, as always, every single week by horticulture educator Ken Johnson in Jacksonville. Welcome back to Illinois, Ken. We're happy to see you again.
Hello. Thanks. It's been a while.
It sure has. Your beard's grown 5 inches since I've seen you last, and then you'd cut it, and it's grown 5 more inches. So, yeah. Oh, how are the trips and travels for you?
It was good. It's kind of rough coming back. Spent a lot of time out west where there's no humidity or very little humidity, and in the mountains where much cooler temperatures. So, getting used to 70-degree temperatures and during the day and 50s at night. It was a little rough coming back to mid to upper 80s and nasty humidity, but we'll be all right. We'll get used to it again.
Well, before the show, Ken was talking about his trip to Death Valley, and he's like, oh, it was 106 degrees, and I'm like, oh, so like 88 in Illinois with 90% humidity, especially with all the corn sweating right now. So it is humid out there, and your garden looks good, Ken.
Yeah, I walked around a little bit. It doesn't look nearly as bad as I had feared. The mulch is holding up. So if nothing else, mulch your gardens before you go on vacation. You'll save yourself a lot of headaches when you get back.
Mm-hmm. Well, there you go, folks. You've heard it here many times before. Mulch is your friend. Use it. All right. Well, our topic this week, we are going to dive in agroforestry and the topics about agroforestry, kind of the subtopics, we should say. And agroforestry, that's one of those subjects I've read about. I've learned a little bit about it, but I've never really dove into it, very much, just kind of knowing what it is in the back of my head. Ken, have you any experience with agroforestry?
I'd say I'm in a pretty similar situation.
Mm-hmm.
Read about it a little bit, but haven't really gotten into the weeds too much, so to speak.
Yes. Well, I'm glad we are both on the same page then. So I think it's time to introduce our special guest for today, and that is MJ Oviatt. MJ is with the Savana Institute, and she is an Illinois agroforestry educator. You are in Champaign-Urbana. So MJ, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, we are happy to have you. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty here on agroforestry, got to get to know a little bit about you. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what do you do at the Savana Institute?
Sure. Yeah, I'm MJ Oviatt. I've been in this position. I'm now going into my 3rd season. I'm sure you all are familiar with referring to your life as through the seasons. So 3rd summer with them. But my road to getting here has been long, and it's very entrenched in the Champaign-Urbana community. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, but I went to U of I for NRES, Natural Resource Conservation, or Natural Resource Environmental Science, and then got really involved with the local farming scene in town. I don't know if you've ever interviewed anyone from the local farms of Champaign-Urbana, but I worked at pretty much all of them. I worked at Solagradia and Delight Flower Farm, and I worked at the student farm there at U of I. But when I was in college, I was taking a lot of horticulture classes, and at the time, there was some professors that were really interested in agroforestry, and I thought it was just the coolest idea. I really care about the environment and really wanted to do some restoration work, and I also wanted to keep growing food, so it really felt like I got to do the best of both of those things within agroforestry. So when I graduated, I worked at these farms, but my intention was always to get a job professionally doing agroforestry stuff. So about 5 years ago, I think, that's fine, I'll say 5 years, I started working at Canopy Farm Management, which is a startup that came out of Savanna Institute, and I was doing like field technician work with them. And then this position opened up at Savanna Institute to be an educator. And so no, that's what I do these days. And I think my job is very similar to probably what you guys do at Extension. Um, I'm like an educator for a nonprofit. I put on field days. I do education materials. I don't run our podcast, but I do contribute to ours sometimes. Um, and yeah, do a lot of adult education. So that's the gist.
Well, excellent. And what's the name of the podcast with um, the is Savannah Institute?
The Savannah Institute podcast is called Perennial AF. AF standing for
Nice.
agroforestry.
Of course, of course. I wouldn't think it
Yes.
stood for anything else.
Yes. AF is agroforestry in my world.
I love it. That's great. Oh yeah. I have been to a couple of the local farms over in the Champaign County area. One of them I remember was a goat creamery. That was an interesting place. Some really interesting ice cream, or I think it was ice cream, a sweet, creamy treat. I'll call it that. Maybe not quite ice cream.
Yes. Prairie fruits, I think, is what you're thinking of. And they're incorporating agroforestry systems at that farm, which is really cool.
Excellent. Cool.
All right, so let's get on to the topic for today. So agroforestry. What is, I guess, agroforestry, and does it work in the prairies of Illinois?
Sure, good questions. Um, I'll give you the USDA definition of agroforestry and then kind of give like a human answer to that.
Mhm.
So the USDA recognizes agroforestry as a legitimate agricultural system, management style, and they define it as the intentional integration of trees and shrubs with crops and or livestock for economic, environmental, social benefit. So for lots of different benefits. And that can look a million different ways. There's millions of different kinds of species. It depends on where you live. Agroforestry is practiced all over the world. It's probably the original form of farming, period. We already eat a lot of things from trees and utilize trees in our landscapes. But these days, especially in the Corn Belt and in Illinois, um, our agriculture is so intense that we don't always incorporate other species other than the crop that we're growing or the livestock that we're tending to. So, uh, agroforestry in North America, agroforestry, temperate agroforestry is what we do, is newer because we've lost it since like the United States basically was formed, and it's kind of been thrown to the wayside. So we're kind of bringing something back, but of course we utilize a lot of the new technology that is being utilized today by other kinds of farmers, and now with all of our mapping software and different science, like it looks different than it did 200 years ago. And then if it does work in Illinois, I think on the last long episode that you all had with Ryan and Emily, Ryan was describing what the Illinois landscape looked like prior to like European colonization. And we're called the Prairie State for a reason. We had prairie everywhere. But there are were definitely pockets of trees. And Savannah Institute's name comes from that part of the landscape. We had a sort of savanna across the Midwest, especially in Illinois, Wisconsin, Indiana, Iowa. I don't know if you've ever done a podcast or learned about this, but Champaign-Urbana itself was once the big grove, and it was actually pretty forested and had a lot of trees. But not everything was just kind of like the Great Plains, no trees. There were trees in different areas across Illinois and coming up through southern Illinois. Not necessarily forested, but 10 to 30% cover, tree cover, shrubs, wild plums and hazelnuts and things like that. So agroforestry isn't just pure restoration, but we do recognize that Illinois did have more woody things in the landscape. It wasn't just prairie, but yeah, we'll get into it. It's more than restoration, but it's also not strange to be bringing trees back to our landscape in Illinois. It makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Now, I would say the when I get into the world of forestry, if I stick on that, and it's kind of it dovetailing in what you just said, there's always this goal of, are we doing this for the money, like the economics? What can we pull from the land? Or are we doing this for the ecological benefits? So how does agroforestry play that? Because in forest, like just general forestry, when I talk to a forester, it's like, hey, it's either this or this. It's like, well, can't we have both? Like, why are our goals seem to be competing with each other? So MJ, are we doing this for money? We're doing this for ecology? Is there another thing that I'm not knowing about here? Why are we doing this?
Well, I work for a nonprofit, so I'm definitely not doing it for the money.
There you go.
That
That's
said,
how it's
I
us
am
all.
happy
Yeah.
at my job. No, but seriously, this is kind of a funny answer, but we're really trying to meet it right in the middle between the environmental benefit and the profitability of these systems. We're recognizing that farming is a form of land management. When I was at U of I, the thing that I learned the most was natural resource management. That was what I was taught. And the way I was taught that was preparing us for being land managers for nature preserves and state parks, national parks, and things like that. But when I looked around and saw that, most of what is outside of campus is cornfields, I was like, well, what about this land? And that's what all of my colleagues at Savannah Institute and the folks that started Savannah Institute were wondering. Like, we can't just have these state parks and these nature preserves. Is there some way that we can take the benefits that come from these high quality ecosystems and incorporate them into our production systems and kind of meet in the middle and benefit both, which we'll get into with the two practices we're really going to highlight today. So we're I often say this in all of my presentations is we're trying to find that puzzle piece that's like or that perfect middle point where you can get a lot of those ecosystem benefits from the landscape that you'd get from conservation, but you're not completely just leaving something still. You can also harvest things and create some revenue off of that landscape. And maybe it's not the same as a commodity and not pure like economic benefit, but in the long run, like we can see that that may be even more economically beneficial than what we're what is the status quo in most of our state. So, and then the other thing on that point, I think people often think I'm a forester, which maybe one day I will become one. I don't know. But my background is in like annual cropping. Um, and I know some about timber production, but that's really not our focus. It's more so enhancing the landscape and then um, doing some fruit and nut production is also like a majority of our work.
So what would be like a few examples of the benefits if somebody were to do this like on a farm, or if they have, a few acres of land and they want to incorporate agroforestry onto their property?
Sure. There's tons, and I'll say from this perspective of a landowner or a farmer first, and then we can probably also talk about just like general benefits to everybody that comes with these practices. But the cool thing about agroforestry systems is that you are thinking about production. This isn't like okay, let's go in and just completely restore the native landscape. There's an element of that, but it's also like, okay, what can we grow here that will do well and we can also sell? So Today, I really want to focus on the two edge of field practices that we promote a lot of in Illinois, which are windbreaks and riparian buffers. And so, like with a windbreak, you're incorporating a row or multiple rows of trees onto the edges of your farm property. And those trees will actually help the crop on the inside. Wind erosion can be really detrimental to our crops, and you see this a lot in the Great Plains. But we've also been noticing it in Illinois, especially these dust storms that have also been happening. That is coming from reducing the number of windbreaks we have on our landscapes and perennials that we have on our landscapes. Trees can stop the wind, block it, protect the inside crops. They also help lower evapotranspiration. So things that are growing close to trees will retain their water more. And as we see like big fluctuations in temperatures and long droughts, that's even more important to have low rates of evapotranspiration, keep the water in the ground. So trees really help with soil health, and that's from wind erosion and water erosion as well. They retain water with their perennial roots, like we would see also with like prairie strips and things like that. But prairies only get so tall, and trees can really protect longer. Uh, Sorry, my hand's getting caught between in my green screen. Trees are taller and thus can like protect further into the field than shorter things. Um, and maybe one other point, which I'm happy to talk about this stuff. I'm wearing my tree crop shirt today,
Hmm.
but you can incorporate things that you also harvest in those riparian buffers and windbreaks. So, say you are interested in doing like a specialty crop of some kind, or you have a partner that you can work with that will then sell that specialty crop. You can plant like rows of, I have here June berries or service berries and harvest those, or like black currants or pecans or chestnuts or things like that. So it's diversifying a farm. Not everybody's interested in that, but there's potential there and there's markets.
Okay, you had mentioned maybe not everyone's interested in this particular in agroforestry, but you know what? I love that we're looking at windbreaks and riparian buffers today because Illinois is both windy and just it's flat. Drainage is an issue here. Like you have to really consider where your water's going and how it's flowing off of your field. Like those are huge considerations for us. So if people aren't as interested in this, why aren't we seeing as much of this throughout the Illinois landscape? Or like what are the barriers keeping people from incorporating more agroforestry practices?
Yeah, there are a lot of barriers. I think the largest one is that there's this notion that you really can't take any land out of annual crop production. And I think people are very into having really high yield, and that makes a lot of sense. It's a very easy to understand concept. It's like, sports, which
Mhm.
I'm a big sports fan. I understand you want to have the highest score. And when you take maybe like 5% of your field out of that production, you may see a yield decrease, but that's not always the case. And I think their intuition or logic tells them, well, if I stop cropping a little bit of my land, then I'm going to have a yield decrease. But when we see what's actually happening, that interface between the trees and the crop, because of that wind protection, you can see increase in yield and like less plant stress because it's having its brother block the wind
Mhm.
and create a better microclimate for the crop. So I think the notion is, again, oh, I can't afford to take any land out of production, but the reality is ecosystems are complicated and there's ways that we can incorporate different strata of plants onto the landscape, and it actually is beneficial for the thing you're trying to grow, even though you're growing less of it. But the other big barriers besides just that cultural element are land ownership. Nobody wants to invest in a tree if they're not going to be reaping the benefits of those trees for the next 20 years. So if you don't own the land or you don't have a strong lease agreement with the landowner, we see this with all conservation. Like people don't want to get into a CRP contract. You don't want to put in that work if you're not going to get to reap the benefits. And I think maybe there's a lot of landowners that aren't familiar with agroforestry or how nice it would be to incorporate onto your landscape. That's something I'd really love to talk with people with. So if you're a landowner, a non-operating landowner, hit me up. Um, and then maybe the last thing is something that I touched on with what I was saying before is trees are slow. Like they grow and live way longer than humans do. They're like we have multiple generations when they have their one generation. So they're a long-term investment. If you plant a windbreak, you probably won't start getting benefits, that full mature tree benefit for a decade. There's some species that I'll talk about that grow really fast and can create that benefit in the first 5 years. But for these slow growing, but really dense windbreak trees like evergreens, it takes them like 20 years to get to 20 feet tall. So there's government programs that help offset those costs, but it's kind of like a retirement account. So I want people to be investing in trees like they're investing in their 401k. Uh, but yeah, it just needs to become a cultural thing again. Which it was. Like the Dust Bowl, the answer was windbreaks. Like windbreaks were planted all throughout the Great Plains in the 30s and the 40s. It was like the largest like federal land management project ever done by FDR. And that was how the NRCS was started. So there's generations before us that are, I think, more familiar with the benefits, but we've kind of lost that knowledge in time. So yeah, that's a little added bonus to the question, but we could talk about that later if you want.
So kind of sticking with the windbreaks, I think when most people think of windbreaks, they're thinking of your traditional pine or spruce trees. And you mentioned, with your shirt, there's other plants we can kind of incorporate that, make it a little more maybe multi-purpose. I want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Good question, Ken. The we still utilize a lot of evergreens. Yeah, I think anyone who's familiar with a windbreak, if you're really trying to create a living barrier, a living fence of sorts, using evergreens like spruce and eastern white pine. We use a lot of arborvitae, white cedar as well. Makes a lot of sense. They create a really nice screen. And that can be both for annual crops, corn and soybeans, or for livestock and buildings and things like that. But what I think would be really awesome is if we saw more than one row windbreaks, if people would do 3, 5, 7 row windbreaks. Habitat corridors are really, really important, and we don't always have those in our landscape. We will have some nice like state parks or nature preserves, but then there's no way for these larger fauna to travel between those state parks. And this was something that was really brought up when I was in college. Like this is something that we really need to be working on to um, make sure that we're having our larger mammals have habitat on the landscape. So when you have like a 3, 4, 5, 7 row windbreak, that allows for a lot more species and really cool species that um, have lived here for thousands of years to keep doing their business. And that usually means incorporating a lot of our native stuff, oaks, hickory, walnut, We work heavily with our local NRCS offices and do soil tests and things like that to see what would have been native to whatever area you're in. And then I mentioned earlier, you can also incorporate things that you're harvesting from. So you could do a fruit row of some sort, nuts. You can do things that are floriculture. So like willows and forsythia and you name it, like roses even if you want to. Um, but again, if you're going to do things you're harvesting, you probably still want to protect those things from the wind as well. So not having it be just like one row of chestnuts on the edge of your farm field, they probably won't do so well. But if that's incorporated into multiple row system, um, then that could be an added diversified income stream of sorts. If you're going through like one of these government programs that are conservation, like our conservation program, like the CRP, they have a species list and they're going to want you to do very specific species. Um, I don't know all the ins and outs of that, so I'm not going to like go too in depth, but things that are not native and are more horticultural in nature, like if you want apples or something like that, they usually won't cost share, but sometimes they do. So you just kind of have to check with your local office. So yeah, I can give some examples of what we have going on at some of our demonstration farms. Um, I'll just make a quick plug right now. If you come to our farm in Urbana, that is now in its fourth season. Um, it's in like unincorporated Urbana past High Cross Road. We have 11 different windbreaks there that are 3-row windbreaks, and they're all different kind of designs with those. So you can come and see for yourself what they look like and maybe get a sense of what you can do.
Excellent. And we will link below to the Savannah Institute. MJ, if it's okay with you, or you might throw your email down there as well if people want to reach
Yeah.
out directly to you. So yeah, look in the notes below for contact information. So I do have a question. The way that I have taught things in the past with extension, so like with trees, for example, is what not to do's. That is because, and maybe Ken, you can back me up on this, that people do not call us when everything is hunky-dory or everything looks good. They always call us when there's a problem. So I don't have pictures of good-looking trees or good-looking plants. I have all of the wrong things, all the bad stuff. And I can use that as a teaching tool. So I'm thinking now, MJ, if someone has decided, well, maybe I will, look at either at least drawing it out or looking at plants or ordering plants for planting a windbreak, what are some things you don't want to do when you are designing this windbreak?
Good question, and I completely understand where you're coming from, Chris and
Mhm.
Ken. Yeah. What's wrong with my tree? It's not doing that's
Yes.
my family and my friends. Those are the texts that I get. I'm sure you get those too. Like,
Oh,
why
yeah.
isn't my hydrangea blooming? And I'm like, I don't know.
Yep. Hmm.
Fertilize it. That's usually what I say.
Yes.
Um, but you guys can tell me maybe later if you have any ideas on that. But I'll answer your question first. Um, some do's and don'ts, but mostly the don'ts. I think the main thing is something I touched on. You shouldn't try and grow things that wouldn't naturally do well. Like, do some heavy research on what is native to your landscape and understand what is going to grow well for you. Don't try and plant some exotic species that might not do well. Don't try and plant a chestnut where you have very poorly drained soil. You're not going to get a lot of chestnuts. Like there's trees are particular and each tree is different, each shrub is different on what pH it likes, etc. So make sure your tree selection makes sense. Along those lines, if you're planting a windbreak in particular, you want it to be perpendicular to the prevailing winds. You don't want to create like wind tunnels. And if you're working with someone, um, either from the NRCS or at Savana Institute, we can help do those designs, but you don't want to just be like making the wind problem even worse on your farm. That would kind of be bad. And then maybe the other two that come up a lot are trees can be really expensive, but they also don't have to be. There's state nurseries that sell bare root trees that are like those little guys, and you buy them in the springtime and you plant them in the spring, and they're dormant and they come in bundles. Those are the kind of trees we use in the majority of our plantings, even for plantings that we're doing timber production with. Um, we like to just buy those cheap $5, $2 small sticks. And that's both because windbreaks usually take a lot of trees, like you're buying a bulk amount. Um, so it's reducing the cost, but also when they're that small, they require less. So if you've planted like a bald and burlap tree in town or in your yard, like you got to go out and water that thing. Like it is a big pumpkin tree with a lot of roots. You have to make sure those roots are moist. But when it's little, it requires less and it'll take more time to grow, but it will also require a little bit less watering on your part. We don't water any of our windbreaks. I think we've maybe done it once when we had that really, really bad drought a few years ago. Um, but you're gonna want a plant that's not gonna be really picky. Um, and then that last thing is, but you still need to manage it. So
Mhm.
I'm sure you guys say this too, like people will plant a tree and they're like, oh, it's a tree. Like that thing is stronger than me. It'll grow. But no, you have to weed it. You have to make sure there's not weeds like coming up and suffocating the tree. Trees do a lot better when you're giving it like a 3 foot radius, no weeds, allow it to really expand its root system. Um, Mulching it is great, but really that weed management is really, really crucial. Even just mowing. I think, yeah, people think grass can't kill a tree, but it can. Grass and broadleaves and little green things that annoy your tomatoes also annoy baby trees. So take care of that.
And the answer to the hydrangea question, just go buy a new one because there's like 1,000 new ones that come out every year. So just
Okay.
enjoy the new hydrangea cultivars that come out.
Okay.
We can't keep up. It's impossible.
Yeah, every day, I'm sure.
Hmm.
Just tell them it depends.
There you go.
Oh yeah, I say that a lot.
All right. So you mentioned there's another um, kind of common agroforestry practice, riparian buffers. Okay, I guess what are these, and what are the benefits to, I guess, installing one of these in the landscape?
Yeah, I love riparian buffers. I think they also should just be everywhere. Um, I think riparian buffers as a concept is a little more broad than agroforestry, that is basically any kind of vegetative buffer that's surrounding a waterway of some kind, be it a lake, a stream, a ditch, whatever, a wetland. But the riparian buffers that we talk about and design at Savannah Institute are woody in nature. So that's when you're not just incorporating like grass or a prairie, but also doing it with trees and shrubs. So it's really just however much space you want to give that waterway on either side, you're planting some trees and shrubs that are not necessarily what you would put in a windbreak. Sometimes it is, but there are species that are native to wet areas, things like persimmon and hickory and throw in some sycamore or something like that, elderberry. But yeah, that can be really great for other kinds of habitat, aquatic habitat really benefits by having some woody stuff in and around it. It's very much a restorative kind of agriculture system. And we also do this um, primarily for the water quality. We, I think, Chris, you were kind of bringing it up. We see a lot of runoff, chemical runoff and fertilizer runoff from our fields. I think Illinois and Iowa are constantly competing for who's putting the most in the Mississippi River. Again, not really a competition I'm really interested in being part
We're
of.
winning.
Like I want to, this is golf. I want to have a lower score than Iowa on
Oh,
this
that's
one.
right. That's right. Yeah, we're supposed to have the lower score on this one.
Yes, they always have to remind me that one.
Yeah.
But I think I don't know. The funny thing about that problem to me is like that's just money going down the drain. Like I feel like we don't talk about that enough. You're paying to plant, you're paying to put this fertilizer on your land. Like you want it to stay there. You don't want it to just go flushing down the waterway. Like nobody wants that. So with riparian buffers, I think the cool thing that we're looking into and we're experimenting with is again, incorporating some edible or harvestable species in those riparian buffers that will act like sponges. Their root systems are really, really good at capturing any of that excess runoff. And it's like in the 90 percentile. Like that is why we love wetlands. I don't know if you guys ever seen those videos of like water moving through a wetland and then in the end it's like super, super clear and purified. That's exactly the concept we have going on with these ecosystems. Um, so you're putting that fertilizer on your field anyways. Maybe you can start harvesting something from those riparian buffers that are getting that extra nutrients, um, and then also stopping it from going into the water and then, you know, causing a lot of damage in the Gulf and creating hypoxia zones and things like that. So yeah, that's what a riparian buffer is. I'm happy to talk more about it um, in detail.
I really like that idea because there's I've heard stories from farmers, and I have my yard backs up to a farm field. Their drainage ways are vegetated, but really just grass. But a
Hmm.
lot of times, like the farmers, they plant, they harvest, but they do contract a lot out as well. They're not necessarily overseeing um, some of those field operations that are going on. And I've heard stories, and I've seen with my own eyes some of these, applicators going out and just running right through these waterways, just and just destroying them, and farmers getting upset like, oh, you tore up my drainage way, I gotta reseed it, or we have to regrade it now because it was wet, and all of these things. But the idea of putting maybe some more like perennial type woody structure plants out there, I like that because it gives it more structure. um, Makes it seem like, hey, this is kind of a hands off or wheels off kind of area. So I think that could be
Hmm.
incorporated into more instances because we have fewer farmers, we have more land in terms of what they're farming, so they can't be everywhere all at once. Um, hmm. Now my wheels
Yes,
are turning, MJ. Yeah.
good. Yeah, I totally agree. I think um, with all of these trees, they very much create a visual, an easy to see barrier of sorts. Like trees have always been used as a way to like delineate different spaces. Um, and doing that with the waterways would be awesome. I think, I don't know, I'm sure you'll get a question if there's some farmers listening out there, like, what about tile drainage? You can't be doing this when there's tiled fields. And my answer to that is, well, we don't really know, and we're figuring that out. And yes, we're aware that this could be a big um, roadblock for adoption of agroforestry practices. However, again, we're not sure quite how much tree roots would affect tile. And I think, especially if you don't have a tiled field, um, and are particularly interested in conservation, if you do have a waterway, like really think about adding some woody species into there, because a lot of what's endangered right now is aquatic species, and again, we have this really large issue with water quality. And that water also goes into our like drinking water. So this isn't just about the Gulf. This is water that also goes into like our aquifers, but also well water and things like that. So um, it's also a localized issue that's coming off of our farm fields. Yeah, I bring up tile, and then I was like, well, actually, I don't have an answer to
That's
I just
fine.
want people to be aware that we know it's a problem that we need to address and figure out, but right now we're not too worried about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there was a lot of the like the nitrates in the water that was in the news quite a bit lately in Iowa and also up in northern Illinois. Um, and in the past, it was a much larger problem too when more rural folks were on well water, like dug wells, even drilled wells. But it definitely was a problem. And here it is back in the news again. And we have dust storms and all kinds of stuff. What is happening right now? We need to protect these waterways, riparian buffers. It sounds like it's like a viable strategy for doing this.
Yes. And maybe one more international example that I think is really worth noting. In Brazil, where we're seeing a lot of deforestation for corn and soy production, mostly soybeans. They're very competitive with us now. Um, I am not a fan of the deforestation that's going on down there, but they also have a lot more regulation around their buffers. So they're very much required to leave a lot of room around waterways down there. And I think it's worth noting, like, that's because we've recognized how vital, like, the Amazon is for the globe's oxygen and just like biodiversity, period. But when the United States was going out and converting these diverse ecosystems into highly productive ecosystems or highly productive agricultural systems, um, we don't have those kind of rules. So I think it's worth noting, I don't know, maybe we should think about like we also have biodiversity in North America, and maybe we could be doing more of what the other parts of the globe are also doing with terms of like preserving just a little bit of the land for all of its benefits that it's giving us.
All right. So you mentioned earlier, but we'll remind people again. So does Savannah Institute have examples of some of this agroforestry in practice? And then, like you mentioned before, you have, landowners, if you guys provide education or instruction on this type of stuff.
Yeah, we have a ton of that stuff. So we're a nonprofit, we're a research and education nonprofit. So that's the heart of our mission is um, helping people do this and also figure out the best management practices and best designs for this stuff. If you want to come out and see some real life examples and you're in Illinois, you can come to one of our demonstration farms. I am the main organizer of our field days out there, and we have one in, like I said, Urbana. That's 120 acres, and it's one of the larger demonstration sites in the country that has windbreaks. There's also some alley cropping out there, and different kinds of tree crops, hazelnuts, black currants, elderberry. And then we have a little bit more of a simple demonstration right next to Allerton Park, the 4-H Memorial Camp demonstration farm. That one's a little bit older. That one's in Monticello. That is an alley cropping site with timber trees and then corn and soy rotation in between them. And then in northern Illinois, in Ogle County, we are at Fields Restored. There we have a riparian buffer that has some edible and harvestable species in there, things like pecan, persimmon, willow, elderberry. Um, and that is in a grazing pasture. And then we're also doing a silvopasture experiment there, which is where you incorporate trees into a grazing landscape. And silvopasture is really cool. You guys should just interview somebody who focuses on silvopasture. Maybe another episode. And then, yeah, that's all the stuff in Illinois. We're going to be launching a partner farm network next year in Illinois, which I'm really excited about. So we're doing this currently in Wisconsin, where a lot of our work also is. And the partner farm network is private farms that are doing agroforestry would be part of this network and would get to learn from each other and um, also host field days showcasing how they're utilizing agroforestry practices. And I think those are really exciting because you get to see like the demonstration farms are really cool. We're doing a lot of research there, but when you see like a real life farmer running their business with this stuff working for them, I think that can really make people see like, oh, this is a viable option for me. So come out to a field day. This is coming out in July. We're having a ton of fun stuff in August and September. We're hosting a big field day, all day workshop with extension in Monticello at that 4-H camp farm at the end of September. And that's going to be really highlighting the wildlife benefits that come from agroforestry, both for people that just really care about birds and bees and wildlife, but also people that love to hunt. We're going to be having some design presentations on that and talking about designing these systems for big bucks and quail and pheasant and things like that. So that's probably the biggest event I want to uh, showcase, but we do stuff every month. And if you go on our website, go on the events calendar, you can find stuff there. You can also, I'll send you this uh, to put in the show notes. And right now, in terms of other things, if you don't show up to a field day, that's okay. There's a lot of information on our website. Should I just share my screen? I was thinking about doing that.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to show off how cool our website is. So this is our website, Perennial AF. If you go up here, we have a lot of information. You can check out some different farms we have across the Midwest mostly. That's where we mostly work. And then information on all these different crops. We have a plant breeding program where we're breeding some native and like native adjacent crops that have not really gone to market yet in America. So things like black currants and black walnuts are very like emergent, and hybrid chestnuts and hazelnuts in the Midwest. These are things that we're collaborating with other people on, and also trying to build markets for. Uh, and those get incorporated into some other kinds of agroforestry systems as well, but you can do those in windbreaks and riparian buffers too. There's lots of different resources. We're really hitting this at all angles. Like I said, we're doing like business development and plant breeding and training young farmers and demonstrating them and doing ecosystem science so that we're like learning what species utilize these things and are we really seeing water quality? Like we're scientists. We want to like have the evidence of what's working. And then there's at our events, hit on the calendar, and then every year we have the perennial farm gathering, which you're like, wow, I want to join the agroforestry community. They sound cool. You can come and join us there. It's a big conference, but it's a lot of fun people from all over the country get together and talk about how to do this thing. So yeah, check us out.
That's so cool. That's like your one-stop like website for all your agroforestry needs. I've been threatening Ken for years, like, Ken, we need to do more hazelnut stuff. So I'm going that website. We're gonna look into this.
Yay.
Yeah, I got 5 in my backyard.
I got
Cool.
one. Yeah, I got like the straight species, but I've always just been curious about like more cultivated types, like can we get better flavor? A little bit bigger kernel size for the hazelnut. Like I want to study that more. So I'm gonna go check it out.
Cool. Well, you can cut this out if you're like, we don't need to talk about hazelnuts at the end, but I'll add a little hazelnut plug. I'm really interested in hazelnuts. There's a Native American hazelnut, which I'm sure you guys, that's why
Hmm.
you're interested in them. Yeah, they were all over Illinois, but they have really hard shells and
Yes.
smaller nuts than what we're used to buying from the grocery store. And most hazelnuts that we eat are grown in Europe or in Oregon, and they grow European hazelnuts, but the European hazelnut is susceptible to an endemic disease that is in Illinois and in the Midwest called Eastern filbert blight. And it's just everywhere. Like they will get it no matter what. But of course, the American one, it's evolved with it, so it doesn't get the disease. So we're working with folks from University of Minnesota and University of Wisconsin. They are doing a lot of development with the Upper Midwest Hazelnut Development Initiative to hybridize the American and the European and maybe some other species too, to create some cultivars that are really good and highly productive and economically viable for the Midwest. And up in Wisconsin, that's where we have more of those plants. But at our farm in Urbana, we have cultivated varieties. And I think it might be one of the largest like cultivated variety trial in the Midwest. And those are a lot of stuff from Oregon, and Rutgers also has a really good breeding program. So if you guys want to nerd out more about hazelnut varieties, I'm down. Come to the farm in Urbana. I'll show you the Beast and Grand
Yes.
Traverse and all of those. Have you heard of the Beast?
I've heard of the beast. Yes, I
Okay.
have.
Well, we're growing them. We have a lot of beasts in our fields.
Excellent. Oh, this is a road trip that must happen, Ken. All right,
Yep.
I'll pick you
Field
up.
trip.
Yep, let's go.
Great.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, because my hazelnut in my yard, I actually harvested it just from a wild one I found, propagated it. I had like 12 seeds. I think maybe half of those sprouted. One of them survived, me mostly. And now I have this like really cool hazelnut shrub in my yard. So,
Cool.
um, but you're right, that the shell, I had to use a hammer, try to crack that thing. I mean, it was super dense, wound up like smashing some of them, but the like that nut meat on the inside is so good. I think I you don't need to roast it or anything. You just eat it right out of the shell. It was so good.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
they're the best.
All
Right.
right. Well,
Squirrels get mine, or I get blank nuts.
yeah.
So, and we've had those bushes for like 6 years now. A couple of them are like 10 feet tall. I don't think I've
Mhm.
ever eaten a nut off of them.
Oh.
Oh, you might need another pollinator. They aren't
Mhm.
self-pollinated. They need a buddy.
I've got 5,
Mhm.
and they're all we got. I got them from a coworker. I think she got them from Mason State. So I would
Yeah.
assume they pollinate each
Yeah.
other.
Squirrels love them. Like if you're in town, sorry.
I'm starting to.
I'm
Mhm.
Chris, I'm surprised you get nuts from your backyard. But when you're out in the farms, like there's less
Yep.
squirrels out there, so there's less of a worry with them.
We got dogs, I guess.
Right?
But you have a dog, Ken. Buttercup. She's the most ferocious animal I've ever seen.
It's a ferocious name.
Yes.
Very.
Well, MJ, I have one more question for you. Now that Ken and I have kind of nerded out about hazelnut, what if you had an agroforestry project, and I bet you do, but like let's say you had pie in the sky kind of dream budget, whatever, what species would you want in your agroforestry project?
Are you gonna say where I am in the state, or can I just
You
choose?
can. Anywhere in the state of Illinois. It doesn't matter. You go Southern Illinois, no Northern Central. You can be like, I'm in a valley in the west central side of the state. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll give Southern Illinois some love.
Okay.
I sometimes wish we worked more down there because they're already like they're tree people down there. Anyways,
Hmm.
they're surrounded by trees. So say I'm outside St. Louis, there's some really awesome northern pecan growers down there, and I really love northern pecan. I don't know if you guys have had like fresh pecans from Illinois. They're different. They're not what you get at the store. Like they are so good. You can tell how much fresher they are. Sorry, Texas,
Hmm.
but I'm sure they get them too in Texas, New Mexico, whatever. Um, no, that you can grow pecans in Illinois, and I think with um the way our climate is going, it's just gonna get warmer, which means we can grow more of these species, and pecan will become more and more viable. I'm also a huge fan of hickory. I think it's related to pecan, and Native American folks have been utilizing hickory and hickory oil for like thousands of years. And I think it's just something that we um like didn't latch on to in American society. So in my agroforestry system, I would love to grow lots of northern pecan and hickory nuts, both for oil and maybe some hazelnuts. I'm a nut person, even though I have
Hmm.
berries in my background.
Yep.
And then I definitely have this all planned out. Like this is what I want for my future. It's yeah, a small farm, specialty crops. We got windbreaks. We're alley cropping with tree rows of nuts. And then in between, we're doing vegetables and flowers. And then there's like a little restaurant at the farm and people can come and
Ooh,
eat um, stuff from the farm. And that's
that's
that's that's gonna be my life. I'm manifesting it.
there you go. Hmm. It's
Yeah.
got that in your 5-year plan here. So
Yeah, in
that's
five
so
years
cool.
that's gonna work. It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
That lottery ticket.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, Ken, on our road trip, we're going to stop at a few nurseries. We're going to pick up some northern pecans, some hickories, and then we're going to go learn about hazelnuts. So I think this sounds like a great trip.
Let's do it.
Great. You'll get all nutty like the rest of us.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right.
I'd like to, I think, just add one more thing. I think sometimes I like just like saying this because I think a lot of people think like, oh, they're crazy, like this won't work. We can't do this. And I think I want to like recognize not every farm has to incorporate agroforestry, but if we incorporate some on our landscape, something in every county, like the amount of good that would do is enormous. I helped plant our farm in Urbana, and it was like any other normal spring planting season. Everyone was out there in the field. It's all corn and soybeans surrounding us. And like, the land was just completely bare. But instead of planting an annual seed, we were planting trees. And we have just seen such a transformation just in 3 years of the amount of like birds and butterflies and frogs and like different species coming back out there. And I think like if you're inclined to do some conservation, maybe you have a few acres that aren't highly productive with your corn crop, or there's some weird, I don't know, trapezoid that you have, like think about doing agroforestry there. Like it will still produce something for you. We're happy to work with you. You're not alone and interested in doing this. So, it's every little bit I think counts, and it's awesome to see with your own eyes the change that you can make on the landscape. And I think I'm sure you guys have seen this with your gardening, like just growing things will bring other life to you, and it's just such a joy. And it's something I love about this work. So it's my little conclusion for you all.
Excellent way to cap this off. So, Well, that was a lot of great information about agroforestry. We dove into windbreaks and riparian buffers. So there's a lot to digest. Check out the links below in the show notes. Well, the Good Growing Podcast is a production of University of Illinois Extension, edited this week by Ken Johnson. And MJ, thank you so much for joining us this week. This has just been an absolute pleasure getting to learn more about agroforestry, more about the practices that we can incorporate on our land, and then where we can go, like the hazelnut farm, where I can learn all about the beast and Grand Traverse and all of the other hybrids out there that are growing over in the eastern part of the state. So I am looking forward to getting out there. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you very much. Glad I fangirled 2 years ago at a conference with you guys to get on the show.
Well, it was our one and only. So actually, Ken got another a selfie with someone at a football games.
There you go.
He gets recognized a lot.
It's a long run. It's a long game. You'll get there.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys.
Yes, and thank you, MJ. I'm glad we finally got around to doing this. Next time I won't take 2 years. I promise.
Okay. Maybe on my end it will.
And Chris, thank you as always. And let's do this again next week.
Oh, we shall do this again next week. We are up to our eyeballs in weeds, at least in my yards. The horticulture hijinks will continue on the Good Growing Podcast next week. So listeners, thank you for doing what you do best, and that is listening. Or if you're watching us on YouTube, watching. And as always, keep on growing. Okay, Ken. You remember this is the Good Growing Podcast, right? We've been gone a long time. Welcome to the Good Growing Podcast. I am Chris Enroth, horticulture educator with University of Illinois Extension. Blah, 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 blah. See, this is the only time I've ever messed up. Let me take that over. Start over again. All right. Take 2.